morning, happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to video 1. We are going to be discussing essentially Sophie and Edward and a very big event that took place for the very first time. We also happen to catch a small glimpse of the king. So there's a lot to uncover here. Let's just jump in and get there, shall we? Let's go. We are starting out with King Charles, who was seen on the way to Sandringham to church on Sunday morning. Looking good. Moving on. While we're on the subject of King Charles, I wanted to wish him and Camilla a happy 19th wedding anniversary. These two look so happy on their wedding day. And even now, 19 years later, you can tell that when he married Camilla, he married actually the love of his life. I mean, I know that upsets a lot of people, but the truth of the matter is he should have been allowed to marry Camilla in the first place, and he shouldn't have waffled, in the beginning. But I'm glad these two found their way to each other. No disrespect meant to Diana, but she's gone, and these two are very happy together. Still continuing on with King Charles, he was finally presented with the very first banknotes that have his portrait on them from the Bank of England. The Governor Andrew Bailey and Sarah John, the Bank of England's chief cashier, went to Buckingham Palace to present these to Charles himself. I love that. Next up, we have Princess Anne, who did the 11th investiture of the year at Windsor Castle in the stead for King Charles, of course, who's having his cancer treatments. But one of the people who got his investiture today was male sports Jeff Powell. He received his MBE. He was recognized in the New Year's honor list for his contribution to sports journalism. He's had a 57-year career with the Daily Mail. He's covered 13 World Cups, world title boxing fights, and he was named alongside other names from the sporting world, other people who received their MBEs. He brought his wife and son with him to share in the day, and there's even a picture of him with Captain Bobby Moore, who was a close friend of his, who wrote the inscription that features on his statue outside Wimberley. How wonderful. Moving on. Let's move on to Sophie now. For those of you who don't know, she was spotted out on Saturday morning having a carriage ride. That's the day before King Charles was spotted. We know that she drives a carriage just like Lady Louise does. It's a great pastime. She fully enjoys what she does. I'm happy to see her out and about. Let's move on. Let's move on to Edward really quickly, Sophie's fabulous husband. He went last week and visited a quote-unquote inclusive farm. The project was designed to create a working farm as a training environment leading to an educational certificate for those people who are disabled and interested in British agriculture. I love that. I saw this article and went, what? Apparently in a drill that was approved by King Charles, they're going to have French troops guard Buckingham Palace for the first time in 120 years. And then I thought, then it happened. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie and Edward, were at Buckingham Palace today because French soldiers were guarding the palace for the first time in history to mark 120 years of friendly relations between the two countries. I'm probably not going to say this correctly, but in 1904, the Entente Cordiale was signed, and this was to improve relations after the Napoleon Wars, and it is seen as the foundation of the two NATO member alliance. So Sophie and Edward, first they went, when they showed up and they looked at the troops, they walked past 32 members of the 1st and 2nd Infantry Regiments of the Guard Republican, and then 40 guardsmen from F Company Scots Guard that were lined up opposite of the French counterparts. This is the very first time ever in history that a non-Commonwealth country took part in the changing of the guards ceremony. Now, with them also was the French ambassador to the UK, Helene Duchesne, I believe is how you say that. So after they went past the troops, the French ambassador and Sophie and Edward stood up on that pedestal area, and the band first played the French national anthem, then it played the UK national anthem. When you think about it, this was a massive historic moment, what was going on. It's never happened before in France, and it's never happened before in the UK. I think it's just amazing. Both Britain and France said that these ceremonies were part of a, quote, wider program to celebrate the two countries' historic military and diplomatic ties. And this includes major events in Normandy in June that will commemorate the service of Allied veterans who fought to liberate France from Nazi occupation. Now, at the same time that all of this was going on, at a parallel ceremony in Paris, British soldiers wearing their bearskin hats did a joint military parade in front of the presidential palace as a French army choir sang the two national anthems, God Save the King, and then the French anthem. Oh, wow. President Macron made a speech and said that our agreement remains as relevant as ever. He said, and I'm quoting, "Faced with the resurgence of war in Europe, we stand together to defend the values we share and to support Ukraine as it defends itself against its aggressor." It's being reported that Edward and Sophie stepped in for Charles because he obviously is still undergoing treatment for his cancer, and therefore there's just a lot of events going on that he just can't make it, and so he's asked them to step up, and of course they have. I just think that's lovely. Major Murray, who is the commanding officer who was commanding the F Company Scots Guards, said that it was an enormous privilege to host the French in London, to play such a significant part in a ceremony that's never happened before, that it was a monumental occasion, and more so given that it's marking the 120 years between everybody, and it was a great honor. In the meantime, the UK's Foreign Minister, David Cameron, and his French counterpart, Stéphanie Surgeon, celebrated their close friendship, and I'm air quoting here, with a joint op-ed that was published late on Sunday. Fabulous. A big thank you to Remoulade Sauce for showing us everything Sophie was wearing during this absolutely fabulous occasion. One other little tiny bit of information. Sophie was wearing some aquamarine floral earrings at this guard ceremony, and the first time she ever wore them was on her 10-year anniversary of her marriage to Edward, so she probably wore them as a little nod to him. I think that's sweet. You guys know what to do. Double check. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that like button. Hit that bell. And follow me over to video number 2. Let's go.